is the empathy that you have with other people and living things in general, because you feel a lot. And yeah,
The one other thing I remember we had talked about before was you had a visual with the path too. Something about the path turning or the path having curves or taking turns that maybe when you first start out you might think it's a straight path,
oh,
but it's
yeah.
not. That
No, that's the beauty of, that's the beauty of following your heart. You don't know where it's going to lead you. It may lead you down a path that you thought was a straight path to a goal, only to find out that there were several forks in the road. And you took this fork, and then you took that fork. And so it's a journey. And it's like those, the mythological journeys where they wind up in the same place. Knowing it for the first time was basically that kind of journey, because in the end, you come back to who you are, who you really are, which may have been the person you were as a child, before you got indoctrinated.
before you had the spin put on you.
Yeah.
Right.
And I always think of I think that too, if you're in pain, pain is like fear. If you run from it, you don't progress. And people have often come to me and want to talk when they're going through something painful. I don't know why me, but it's happened to me for decades. And I always say the same thing to people, that you can't, same thing I was referring to before, you can't think your way out of it. Pain, if you're in pain, it's an opportunity. You have to see it as an opportunity, not as something you're afraid of and you want to run from or cover up. Because when you're in pain, you're in pain because something is touching on those fears. And those fears and that pain comes to the surface, and you can examine it. You can actually keep it there on the surface and become friends with it, like the boogeyman in the attic. When you're not in pain, those things are buried. You're not in touch with them. But being in pain, or being really frightened, you have an opportunity to deal with those things on the surface, because that's, in that moment of pain, that's what you're dealing with, is your own fears. And I think the only way to deal with it is not, again, it's not logic-based. Maybe people would argue with me and say, oh, well, if you went through enough years of psychotherapy, maybe you could find the cause. But, to me, it's not about that. It's about fear in general. That if you have a chance to relax with your fears, not run from them, but actually not do anything, be still. When you're feeling pain, just be still and just be not afraid, and kind of look at it, get comfortable with it, and eventually you learn to not be afraid of pain. And that's a big step. I don't know how to...
Because especially when you're making that first step away from whatever unhappy state, situation you're in, undoubtedly, when you make that step, you're creating pain for somebody else, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people choose not to make that step because they don't want to hurt other people. But ultimately, they're hurting themselves tenfold by not taking that step. So recognizing that, okay, if I make this change, I might be hurting another person because I'm not doing what they want me to do. But A, it's my life,
Right.
and B, my pain is just going to increase if I keep ignoring that. Because like you were saying, I was having this visual of kind of maybe the surface of water, and maybe it's something that keeps bobbing up from underneath that wants to float,
Yeah.
that you keep pressing it down, it keeps going down, it keeps coming to the surface,
Right,
coming to the
right.
surface. But then if you bring it up to the surface and, like you were saying, sit with it for a while and pay attention and find out what it is and relate to it, then it can evaporate into the sky,
Right.
or it can
Becomes nothing.
it becomes nothing. that continuing to repress it just makes it keep coming back over and over, and it's kind of replaying over and over in your life in different ways. But once you bring it to the surface and recognize it as not something necessarily bad, but just as what it is,
Yeah.
that
And
then
not be
it can
afraid of it.
it can be released. Yeah.
And if it's, and if we're talking about a relationship that is not working for you, you're not doing anybody any favors by staying in it, because basically it's not true to you. If it's not true to you, it's just not true to the other person, and you're denying that other person to find a partner that really is happy with them. And if you stay in a marriage or a relationship because you're trying to make somebody else happy, but you're not happy, you're not making anybody happy.
Right. And even related to some kind of work too, or some kind of job, that if you're not bringing your full self to the circumstance,
Yeah.
then you're not giving really what that organization needs. And maybe there's somebody else who would love that. Maybe there's somebody else who fits well with that.
Yeah.
So that if you listen to yourself and move on, then somebody else can come in, and you're actually kind of creating this opportunity for someone who might resonate with that.
Yeah.
But you know for yourself, this isn't for me. This isn't the
Yeah,
thing.
then how, are you gonna get stuck in that job, and then all of a sudden you got 10 years in, you say, well, if I do another 20 years, I get my pension, and then I'll be all set, and all the rest of that. Well,
Right.
do you wanna trade, life goes quickly. When you're younger, you don't realize that. When you get older, you look back and go, where did it go? Aren't I still, 20? Well, you're not. It goes fast. And you don't want to look back and think that you made too many compromises. That you only have this one incredible gift. What do you want to do with it? Maybe you got, say, 80 years of life, and to enjoy life, and to experience love, and you can't experience love until you love yourself. It's just like knowledge begins with self-knowledge. Love begins with self-love. If you can't love yourself, how can you love anybody else?
Right.
We really love them, and accept them and empathize with them, and accept them for who they are, and want them to be nothing but who they are, not what you want them to be, and to enjoy them for who they really are, and enjoy the differences, and
Yeah. And I think like I'm thinking about that spinning pool ball as well, billiard, and thinking about how I think so often in Western society, or probably in a lot of societies, that that spin is put on us at a very early age, and we don't really know who we are.
No.
We don't know who we are, and so then we continue with this spin, and then we might face it and make that shift and wake up. But really taking the time to be by ourselves and really examine who we are, then that leads to the next step. And I know for me in my life too, as you were talking, when you recognize this is what I want and this is what I enjoy and I like myself and
Yeah.
I have this confidence in myself, then you really feel like you can go on, because it seems like otherwise people can attach themselves to all of these other facets of life as almost a safety net or a life jacket or a life preserver, because they haven't taken that time to get to know themselves.
Yeah, and be whole. Mm-hmm. Because no, it's pretty rare to come out, to enter into adulthood and be whole. Mm-hmm. So you got a lot of growing to do, mm-hmm. And there's no substitute for experience.
Right.
And you can't be afraid to experience. Mm-hmm. You can't just say, here's my little berth, and I'm comfortable here, and I don't really want to go outside of that. Because you don't take risks. Mm-hmm. You really have to risk something, mm-hmm. in order to grow.
Right.
Because how do you know? If you don't want to know the unknown, mm-hmm. Then you can't grow. Mm-hmm. It's a matter of finding yourself. Oh, if you say, okay, I don't want to do that. I don't, it feels uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. That's probably the reason you should do it.
Right.
Because you got to understand why it's making you uncomfortable.
Right.
I told you about that experience I had with taking this job at deaf school. Mm-hmm. I had never dealt with handicapped people or deaf people, and when I answered this ad, it just said they needed a teacher, and when I called, they answered Pennsylvania School for the Deaf, and all of a sudden I felt myself recoiling, like, I don't want that. And because I felt that, I took the job. Mm. And through having experienced, a few years' experience in that job with handicapped people, not only deaf but multiply handicapped kids, I got to really know and appreciate these kids and how mm-hmm. unique they were, mm-hmm. In a positive way. I never would have known that. I would have continued to be repelled by it. And I saw, when those kids would go out in the town, into different stores, people would recoil when they heard all that garbled kind of, and all the noises they make. Mm-hmm. I learned to love it, mm-hmm. Because I knew these kids, and I knew, what really sweet kids they were. But I never would have known that. Okay, right. And had I not taken that step to understand what I was afraid of, mm-hmm. or what I was recoiling from. Mm-hmm. So throughout life, if you, do something that is a little bit of a stretch, mm-hmm. that continues to be a good thing.
Right. I just had this visual of of a spring, and that when a spring is compressed, right, it's tightened and it stays on the ground. But when you release it, it'll leave the ground, yeah. Right? It'll fly. It'll take off. It'll launch off. And so it's that same kind of idea, like thinking of recoiling and being a spring and kind of repressing that and condensing it. You just stay tightly wound up, right?
Yeah.
But if you say, okay, I'm going to release this, let it go, it literally just jumps right off the surface.
All that pressure then is gone. And I think that's the same sort of thing as facing your fears and dealing with pain.